The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
On a Wednesday, as there is a ton going on that we will get to with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker. Before we unveil, well, if you've been on Twitter, you know who it is. But before we unveil our special Wednesday guest that I can't tell you how excited I am to work with. Again, super great guy, super incredible journalist, just all around great dude. And I'll tell you about that in just 1 second. But we got a lot of topics to get to. How about Joe Milton, the only top 100 player on two separate lists? Who is Tennessee's top player? And we'll discuss some different criteria as well. What to make of the Vols secondary in 2023? At what point do we say, man, maybe they're just not any good? Also, Missouri holds a watch party for their team to celebrate a commitment. It's a little bit goofy. The Hawkeyes gambling scandal, is this something that programs are going to have to follow closely? I believe so. And I've said before, Tennessee is a big gambling state. I think that's maybe the new paying players, is that players get involved with gambling scandals, which you certainly don't want to see. But now they have money and they got apps where it's easy to do it. So let's go ahead and get started with our new Wednesday guest. So excited for football season. It is Mr. Jimmy Hyams, the one, the only. He's a Hall of Famer in so many regards, but a Hall of Famer person as well. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Dave, I'm doing great. I don't know if my head will fit on this camera here because of all the things you said about me. It's kind of gotten big here. Caleb, how you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing, Jimmy?
I'm doing great.
I can drop Caleb out of the picture to give your head more room if you want.
You may need to.
All right. If you're on YouTube or wherever you may be sure and hit that subscribe and like button so we can open it up to more people each and every day and each and every week. And turn those notifications on. If you got a little bell on your Spotify or your Apple Music playlist, go ahead and hit that bell so you get notification. More of this Celebrate 98 series coming up as we look back 25 years since Tennessee won a national championship. Does it feel like 25 years, Jimmy? And let me ask you this double question, poor journalism. What is maybe your one most memorable moment about that team that you covered?
Well, first off, it doesn't seem like it's been 25 years. My goodness. Of course, that's the first year I started in radio full time. So, but no, it doesn't seem like that was that long.
Me too.
Yeah. The other thing that I guess it stood out was the fact that they beat Florida at home. It was the first time Tennessee beaten Florida at home in a while. Tennessee wins the game in overtime. Florida misses a field goal, and the stadium erupts. They stormed the field. This is before you got fined for doing it. I was sitting in the press box because I didn't know how long this game would go. The press box shook. I was scared. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. The noise that was there, shaking of the press box, I wasn't sure if it would hold up. It did, thankfully. But that moment, that win for Tennessee was huge.
Wow, pretty good stuff. All right, let's go ahead and get to it with Jimmy Hyams and Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Let's start it off with today's tough question, and it has to do with one quarterback, Joe Milton. Here we go. Today's tough question brought to you by Zen Sports.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Joe Milton, the only top 100 player on two separate lists, ESPN and 247 Sports. So today's tough question is, who is Tennessee's top player? And I understand there's a lot of different criteria, so we want to get into that, but let's go broad view. at first. Zen Sports is the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that can turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get. And with their cash rewards program, you get a lot of cash. For a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back for your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with the promo code HOOKED. That's right, HOOKED. HOOKED, unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting and keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that. And refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Jimmy, let me start with you. And again, broad view, we're going to discuss different criteria. But if somebody just walks up onto the street and asks you, hey, you're Jimmy Hyams, who is Tennessee's top player this year, what would you say?
I would probably go with Joe Milton. And if at the end of the season we're saying he's their best player, that's a really good sign for Tennessee because you've got to have your quarterback play at a high level. If I were to look at a couple of other players that I think would fit into that category, I'm going to go with the guy on defense. I thought Aaron Beasley in the Orange Bowl against Clemson was phenomenal. He ended up moving from middle linebacker to what I think is his most natural position, which is a weak side linebacker. He had 2 sacks. He had 4 tackles for loss. He had a dozen tackles. He was a dominant player in that game. I think he's their best defensive player. There's some others you might argue with, but I think he's headed for a big year, and he'll be playing the weak side. Here, and I'm going to give you a surprise a little bit on the offensive side. I like this guy a lot. Jalen Wright at running back. He was a guy that came to Tennessee as a speedster. He is bulked up. He is strong. He's become a physical running back. I thought he was Tennessee's best running back last year. I think he's more durable than Jabari Small. I think he's going to have a 1,000-yard season. So I like Jabari Small. There are several receivers you could point to, including Brew McCoy, who I would put high on that list to your question. But the other two that I would look at strongly would be Wright and Beasley, with Milton at the top of that list.
All right, Caleb. So if somebody walks up to you on the street and says, you're Caleb Calhoun, who is Tennessee's top player, what would be your answer?
It's Brew McCoy, guys. It's Brew
Think
McCoy.
so?
When you talk about that is the most when we talk about NFL talent, I don't think there's anybody on this roster that I have more faith in the NFL than Brew McCoy this year. To be a star in the NFL. I mean, I think Brew McCoy could actually, among Tennessee wide receivers, and this includes like going back to Stanley Morgan, could have the most successful NFL career of any receiver to ever come out of Tennessee, wide receiver U.
Wow, pretty strong. Jim, what do you think? What are your thoughts on Brew McCoy? I hear from scouts that he is Tennessee's top talent. That doesn't necessarily mean top player.
I like him a lot. He was one of those that I would consider. He's got physically, he fits the part that Caleb was talking about as far as being an NFL receiver. Now, he's going to have to be pretty darn good to be better than the best receivers Tennessee's had. When you look at the careers that, and he went back to Stanley Morgan. If you look at the career that a Carl Pickens had, a Tim McGee had, those guys were elite NFL receivers. So if he can do that, the one thing about McCoy that I wonder a little bit about, I don't think he has elite speed. So now that I don't know if that's going to set him back in the NFL. I do think he's going to be really good in the NFL. Here's the thing about the NFL, and I'll throw this out. We talked about Joe Milton earlier. If Anthony Richardson is the number 4 pick in the NFL draft, could Joe Milton also be the number 4 pick in the NFL draft? I mean, he physically, they're similar. Arm strength, I would go Milton. Now, the big difference, though, is Richardson's a much better runner than Milton. But I think there's a chance Milton could wow him like Richardson and be a top 5 pick in the draft.
Let's get on the message board. If you have any thoughts as to Tennessee's top player, go ahead and throw those out there, and we'll throw those at Jimmy and Caleb. I'm Dave Hooker. Jim, you mentioned Jalen Wright. To me, he's the best combination that Tennessee has of size and speed because, like you said, Jabari Small's not big, doesn't have the wiggle that Jalen Wright has. Dylan Sampson, who's had a fantastic offseason, I'm told, does have the wiggle, but not big either. So would you be surprised if Jalen Wright ends up being Tennessee's top rusher this season?
Not at all. I think he'll crack 1,000 yards, and I think he'll be durable as well. Now, one of the things that Tennessee doesn't rotate receivers much. They do rotate running backs a lot. So you will have Small in the game. You will have Dylan Sampson in the game. Heck, you may have Cameron Seldon in the game, a really good-looking freshman running back. So the number of carries might keep Wright from being among the top 4 or 5 rushers in the SEC. But I think he's a 1,000-yard guy. I think they'll rely on him a lot, and I think he's going to be. It's hard to predict how many running backs in the SEC are going to gain 1,000 yards, but I think he'll be among the top 4 or 5 rushers in the SEC.
I would certainly think so. Now, when we visited with Cooper Mays on a Sunday, I asked him. I said, "What do you think about?" A lot of people saying that you're the most important player, not the best player, the top player, but the most important player, and that people want to wrap you in bubble wrap. And then sure enough, you got hurt or was hurt when I was talking to him and didn't reveal it. 3 days later, if I said most important player because of the fall off from Cooper to whoever they played, likely Ollie Lane, but if I ask you that question, Tennessee's most important player, what would be your top 2 or 3 guys?
Well, Milton would still be there because even though Nico Iamaleava is a good-looking freshman, you have to have elite quarterback play in the SEC if you want to win at a high level. So Milton's the most important, and there is a depth concern. If you take him out of the equation, as much as I like Jalen Wright, we've mentioned the depth at receiver. As much as I like Brew McCoy, there are other really good receivers. I don't see a center on this team that can handle what Cooper Mays does. He's got to get up there quickly. He's got to call signals. He's got to snap the ball fast. He's got to know what to do. I think he would be, behind Milton, the most important player. And another way of saying that, the player they could least afford to lose. Because I think he is a very valuable player. And he's a quality player beyond that. But they're sitting here searching, trying to find another center that can do all the things that Mays can do, and they haven't been able to find that yet.
Yeah, so, Jimmy, when we're talking about most important players, you brought up Aaron Beasley on defense. Mm-hmm. And I have one giant reservation about it, and here's mine. And I get you point he moved over to weak side linebacker and was much better there in the Orange Bowl. But I've taken a lot of the Orange Bowl game with a grain of salt. I'm as we get closer to the season, I have half a mind to just throw everything we saw in that game out the window. And I want to know your thoughts on that. I mean, both teams were playing as a shell of themselves in that game.
Why would you throw it out? I guess would be my question.
I felt Clemson wasn't happy to be there because they wanted to be in the playoff. Tennessee had Jalen Hyatt opt out, Hendon Hooker hurt, and Darnell Wright played, excuse me. But Jalen Hyatt opted out. Cedric Tillman opted out because he was hurt. Jeremy Banks opted out. And it just felt like Clemson, a lot of the game was, we talked about this in the past, they were experimenting a lot with Cade Klubnik in that game. So it seemed like they opened him up for a lot of negative plays because it seemed like they were just experimenting a lot throughout. And so that's why I question Aaron Beasley, because I didn't see much from him outside of that game and the South Carolina game.
Okay. I put more stock in the Clemson game because I actually think the guys that played in that game wanted to play. I don't think the Clemson guys that were in the game were like, I don't want to be here and going through the motion. I didn't see that out of Clemson. In fact, I thought Clemson actually outplayed Tennessee in the first half. They just couldn't make a field goal. So I put more stock in Beasley for that one. I will say this, though, to your point, his first few years at Tennessee, he was not that productive. But I saw some signs in him, like what he did against Clemson, the athletic ability, the plays that he made. He became a playmaker in that game. He had a couple of other games that were pretty good. He ended up, I should know this off the top of my head, I don't, but I think he ended up with 80-something tackles on the season. And that's pretty good. But I also think he was playing out of position. So that's why I have more faith in what he's going to do this year.
Interesting. Squirrel White lands on Bruce Feldman's 101 Freaks list, and he landed an NIL deal with Weigels. That's a pretty big one. And Nico's shown up on my Facebook feed shopping at Walmart, but still, Weigels is pretty big, and he's not going to get that deal, I don't think, without the coaches saying that he's a good dude. He's going to stay out of trouble. So all of that being said, expectations for him have gone through the roof. What does that mean for Tennessee? What does that mean for this season? What does that mean for Squirrel White?
I think Squirrel White's going to have a huge year. If memory serves, he caught 9 passes, 108 yards, and a touchdown against Clemson. Although some people don't count the Clemson game. But I think Squirrel. The one thing I noticed about him right off the bat at practice at Tennessee, none of the defensive backs could guard him. Now, having said that, the defensive backs may not have been very good. But when I watched them try to deal with him in press coverage, it was a mismatch against anybody. Nobody could deal with the guy. He was so quick. Then if you put him in the slot where you can't play bump and run coverage on him because he's off the line of scrimmage, he's hard to guard. So what I think Tennessee will do with him, it'll be two things, I think. They'll either throw the deep ball, the 40, 50-yard, 60-yard pass to him, or they'll throw a quick screen and see if he can break tackles at the line of scrimmage. I think he's a 60-catch guy. I think he's going to have a big year. There was a part of me that thought he might average 18 yards a catch, and then I thought, well, all these little bubble screens and underneath passes they throw, it might impact his yards per catch. But I think he's going to have a big year, and I think there are a lot of schools, particularly in Alabama, that regret not really going after him.
Well, and he said that he and Joe Milton are like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. I don't know that I'd go that far, but I'm kind of a Ron Harper, and Caleb is Michael Jordan. So I'm going to dish right now. Did you like that? I'm going to dish to our Jordan right here. Caleb, take over. I just had to get that funny.
Okay, if you actually studied those 95, 96 Bull teams, Scottie Pippen did the dishing to Michael Jordan. Ron Harper really didn't rack up that many assists. He was just a defensive specialist at point guard.
Hey, I'll be Pippen. I got long arms. I got no problem with that.
Dave, so I've been eating a little crow all summer because I was so certain that Dante Thornton would take that slot receiver job when he arrived as a transfer, and it seemed like Squirrel White never let it go. With Ramel Keaton, with what I think about Brew McCoy, and with Squirrel White, I mean, we've heard they want to go 4 wide a lot, but is there room for Dante Thornton at this point to supplant one of those other receivers?
If they go
Jimmy, sorry.
I like the idea of going 4 wide because I think they have the ability to do that. Now, if you go 4 wide, you're taking probably at least one tight end off the field, and I think Tennessee's pretty good at tight end. So that to me suggests to me they've got a lot of options to create mismatches, whether they go with 2 tight ends or 4 wideouts. I think it's going to be hard to keep Thornton off the field as the season progresses because, Caleb, the one thing I think – here's what you got to do in this offense. Not only is the quarterback reading the defense, but the receivers have to as well. And I think Squirrel White, having 1 year in the system, is probably better at that right now than Thornton. But I think Thornton's going to have a huge impact. He may be a guy – like I think Squirrel can catch 60. Thornton may catch 35, but he might also average 22 yards a catch and have 10 touchdowns. So I think he is going to be very productive, in particular as he learns to read defenses and get on the same page with Milton.
We still need Jacob Warren to make a lot of plays because of all reports. Jacob Warren is brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. He has said, too, that he feels like he can line out wide. So I don't think he's going to get left at all in the dust of a 4 wide receiver set. But, when I look at Tennessee's receivers and the depth and the talent, I'm trying to think, Jimmy, headed into the preseason, if you had to go back, I mean, when is the last time Tennessee has had this much depth and talent at wide receiver?
That's a hard one. I know that
I kind of threw that at you off the top of your head. Sorry about that.
Well, a few years ago, they had some great ones. I think I'm right about this. I think they had Justin Hunter, Derrick Rogers, and Cordell Patterson.
Cordell and Derrick was kicked
2012.
off the team.
He'd been kicked off the team already. I was trying
Derrick
to remember that. Hunter was around. That's a pretty good combination right there. If you go back to the Manning years, I don't know that they were any more talented. We had Marcus Nash and Joey Kent and Cedric Wilson. Now that's pretty darn good, but I don't know that they're more talented than this group. And so and here's the thing too. Tennessee, I think they have some other pretty good receivers behind the four that we mentioned. It's just that Tennessee doesn't play more than four. So those guys may not have an opportunity to show their skills this season. But yeah, I think it's one of the most talented groups they've had. It's one of the most talented groups in the SEC as well. There are not many teams in the SEC that can claim a receiver room like Tennessee's.
Jimmy, you brought up the 90s with the all-time leading receiver in career yards in Joey Kent, but I'm going to do a hot take here. What do you think of maybe Jalen Hyatt as the best receiver to ever wear number 11 and not Joey Kent?
Hyatt had a better season than Kent. Kent had the better career. So I'm going to go with Kent because of his career. Hyatt wasn't very good the year before. Remember, he got benched after 4 games because he couldn't catch pass. Kept dropping passes. So I'm going to go with Joey Kent career, but Hyatt for the single season.
So with these group of receivers, who has the most yards, the most catches? How do you see the production breaking down this year at the end of the year?
I think Brew McCall had the most catches and yards. I think Squirrel White will be in that 60 catch range. I think Thornton may end up leading the team in yards per catch. So I could see them breaking down that way. And then Ramel Keaton, who's going to be consistent, he's going to be in there with nice numbers. And he's a guy I shouldn't forget, although I don't think he's as talented as those other guys. So that's how I see the breakdown at wide receiver.
Interesting. And Jacob Warren with 1,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, right?
For his career, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's still pretty impressive for a career, honestly.
It is, yeah.
As a tight end, we're rooting for him at Off the Hook Sports for sure. Jimmy, let's change gears a little bit. Tennessee's secondary, and at some point, I think we have to ask ourselves: the guys they had just not good. Not the fact that they were inexperienced or learning a new system. And I don't want to throw out names and besmirch anyone, but at what point do we say that some of the players that Tennessee's thrown out there in the secondary just are not good football players?
I remember being at the Orange Bowl, and the beat writers from Clemson were like, Tennessee's secondary ranked 127th in the country in yards per game? Yeah. They ranked 127th? Yes. I think there were 3 factors. One, Tennessee typically on offense jumped out to a lead. Look at their first quarter scoring. So a lot of teams had to pass to catch up. Secondly, I think Tennessee stacked the line of scrimmage to stop the run, and they ranked in the top, 3 or 4 in the SEC in run defense. So I think that was another factor. The third factor, they weren't very good. So
yeah.
And I was talking to somebody recently about, well, you have to have a great pass rush. Okay, but you can't have a great pass rush on 100% of the opponent's drop back passes. 30% is probably a good ratio, but not 100. So you've got to cover people. And they haven't – here's what confounds me a little bit, Dave. They have enough players that either were highly recruited or that are very athletic, and for whatever reason, they didn't do a very good job of pass coverage. And so I think the talent is there to not be great, but to at least be decent to pretty good. They got to get on the same page. I think there were some busts in the secondary and just some moments where they weren't any good. And by golly, you can't go out there and get beat play after play and then celebrate it when you tackle somebody 20 yards down the field. You know, that kind of nonsense that went on against South Carolina, they need to get rid of that.
Great point. Willie Martinez, he was the only coach that wasn't re-upped his contract beyond this year. And he's been around the SEC, so you probably have a lot of knowledge of him that I don't. What are your thoughts on Tennessee's defensive backs coach Martinez, just in general? Is some of this coaching?
Here's what I think of Martinez right now. I think Martinez is a pretty good evaluator of talent. I remember when his first tenure at Tennessee, he talked about how good Justin Coleman was and he was going to be a pretty good player in the NFL. And I'm like, what? Well, he was. He was right about that. So I actually think that Martinez is probably better at judging talent than he is coaching talent.
Yeah, that's a fair. Yeah, I could see that. As far as Tennessee's young defensive backs, or maybe guys that take a next step, is there anybody out there that you particularly look at and think this guy could elevate Tennessee secondary play?
Kristen Charles. I think he's a pretty good player. I think if he can stay healthy, he will help them in the secondary. And I know they got a lot of other guys, Turnage and Haddon and some of these guys. The other one I'm curious about is the transfer from Brigham Young that started his career at Vanderbilt.
Judy Lawley.
Yes, he might be a guy that could help them in the secondary. But Charles is the one that I like based on what I've seen. Now, I've heard good things about Harrison, whose dad was an NFL star. I haven't seen it myself. So I'm going to go Kristen Charles. I'll give you one other one, too, that I've heard really good things about. Jordan Thomas. I think he's another guy that could step up and help him in the secondary.
Yeah, it's funny. Christian Harrison is the son of the player who, had he not been hurt, Peyton Manning probably never gets a ring with the Colts. It's an interesting hot take. Rodney Harrison was hurt in that game when Peyton Manning led that epic comeback, and he used Dallas Clark a lot for that reason. So, Jimmy, as we're talking about freshmen, you seem to be higher on the freshman at safety. I've been high on the freshman at cornerback. I thought Jordan Matthews or Ricky Gibson was going to steal one of those starting jobs. Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think they're not ready?
I think it's a possibility. And actually, I've heard more good things about Matthews and Gibson, but who knows? I mean, it's really early in the process. I do like the recruiting class they brought in with defensive backs, and they are talented. How long will it take them to learn the system? I don't know. But here's the thing about, to me, as a freshman, it's easier to play cornerback because basically they're saying, go guard that guy. It's safety. You have to know a lot more about the inner workings, who's doing this, who's doing that. So I think that's harder to play the safety position in college and cornerback because the responsibilities are greater.
I feel like I've seen flashes from Danico Slaughter.
Yeah.
Jimmy, are you high, low, somewhere in the middle on him based off what you're hearing?
I've got a wait and see attitude on him.
Me too.
I've heard nice things about him, and he's done some good things, and they expect him to be better. But I haven't seen it on the field consistently. I think he's a hard hitter, but as far as his ability, his pass coverage skills, I want to see some more out of him before I say, yep, I believe in that guy.
I can certainly understand that. Jimmy, great stuff as always. We look forward to visiting with you each and every Wednesday and what should be a huge season for Tennessee, but also it's kind of a cool time to be around college football. I don't know where you stand as far as the college football playoff and all that, but it's interesting to see the changes each and every week. So I don't think we'll lack anything to talk about.
No, I like the college football eventually expanding. I thought it was funny that when they only had 2 teams, it was like, well, nobody, it's too hard to have a 4-team playoff. You remember all that nonsense? Now we're going to 12. Okay, so don't give me all that stuff about it's too hard to have 4. But yeah, I like that. I think it's going to be fun to watch it. I think it's going to be electric to see teams, and last year Tennessee would have been one of them, to host a playoff game on their campus. I think that's going to be cool.
Yeah, I do too. Playoff origination story, my favorite, is when you and I, because John Wilkerson, I think, was in the radio room, we're at SEC Media Days, and Commissioner Kramer at the time was on with us. And I asked the question, and here's how I phrased it. Roy, do you realize that what you've done with the BCS seeds teams, and that could lead to a playoff, which he was anti-playoff. And then I remember afterwards, Jimmy saying, might want to call him commissioner.
Yeah. I remember that.
I don't know if you remember that.
He's only 60 years older, but yeah.
Just to quickly push back on both of y'all. Y'all are right. The logistical thing made no sense for the playoff. But I also remember when there were 2 teams and there was always a 3rd team. And they're like, if we just go to 4, we could solve these issues. Now we're at 4, and they're like, oh, we got to go to 12 and we'll solve it. And now 13 is going to complain.
Basketball went to 68 and they're still complaining. The 69th
exactly.
and 70th team are, well, how come we didn't get in? Who are the teams that were left out? Yeah, so there's always going to be a complaint, Caleb. You're right about that.
Jimmy, great stuff. Thank you, sir. Greatly
Guys,
appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Jimmy
All right.
Himes, our Wednesday guest. How awesome is that? Coming up. Wow. How about Missouri? It's time to throw a big party for a commitment. Nothing that happened during a scrimmage or anything else. Ross Dellinger talks college football playoff as well and what might become of that. And then we're also going to discuss gambling and why Tennessee and every other school should be concerned. I know we're having a little bit of problem with the message board, so apologize for those that haven't been able to interact. Not sure what's going on there with the YouTube, but we certainly appreciate you watching. See a bunch of people on board. We'll be back in 2 minutes to tell you why Tennessee should want one college football playoff version over another, because they're going to be in college football playoff contention. Stay tuned. More after this.
Family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Welcome back with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker, to use my friend Bill King's term, wordsmithing with you as we will talk Missouri's bizarro celebration for a commitment. Used to be you couldn't even talk about these dudes, which is so weird. You could only answer the question, are you recruiting player X? And you would say yes or no. You couldn't say he's a really good player. You couldn't say anything about him. And now you can hold watch parties, which is a little bit embarrassing, in my opinion, to steal Caleb Calhoun's phrase at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. Also, an investigation continues into Iowa's program. And I'll tell you what, gambling could very well be an issue for several SEC teams. I think we all know that in the South, the passion can lead to throwing out some cash. And I think we know that Tennessee is a pretty big gambling state as well. So the players need to stay away from that. And I think we're going to see, Caleb, probably 4 or 5 years that it takes for society to adjust to the looser gambling laws. Probably the same way as marijuana. I think you're going to see society adjust, realize what you can and can't do. But right now, it seems like it's kind of okay for some, kind of okay for others, and we'll get into that more. For instance, the NFL, you can bet on other sports. I don't think college football is going to go that direction, but who knows? Let's get to college football playoff talk. They're meeting August the 30th. They'll consider 2 new playoff proposals in a 12-team model. What 2 are they looking at, Caleb? And then we'll discuss what might be best for an SEC team, a la the University of Tennessee as well. But what are they looking at? What's the difference? Because the Pac-12's kind of messed everything up, or the lack thereof.
Yes, because the Pac-12 has collapsed. It used to be the top 6 conference champions and then the top 6 wild card. And that way, all Power 5 champions could go, plus one of the top group of 5 teams, and then just the top 6 teams after that. Obviously, you can't consider the Pac-12 a Power 5 conference anymore. It's barely a conference. So
Forget Power 5. It's barely even a conference.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't have a Pac-4 champion going. So now right now, and I think it's going to be less in 2 years, but right now there's a Power 4. So it makes sense to have the top. So they're floating 2 proposals. One is the top 5 conference champions. So just eliminate the Pac-12. So you have a Power 4 and then one group of 5, 6, whatever. And then 7 wild cards. The other floated option is just top 12, period, end of story. I understand. I really do understand that the integrity of the sport would suggest you should just do top 12, because if you're really that good of a conference champion, you're going to be top 5 anyway, or one of the top 12 teams anyway. But I would also say, I think the conference champion and automatic bids at least adds some theater to the regular season. And I think that's something college football doesn't want to lose. I mean, the NFL still lets 8 and 8 teams that win their division get automatic playoff berths.
No, and I'm curious what you think would be best for the SEC, because the SEC, it's not going to be a matter of arguing for 2 teams. It's going to be a matter of arguing for 3 teams, and maybe even in some cases 4 teams. So I believe that you should have a formula like the old BCS formula, and that it shouldn't matter if you're a conference champion or not. I've always been of that ilk, and I think those sort of things will sort themselves out. And I realize that could deflate the conference championship thing, but that's how I would do it. So what best benefits the SEC?
It best benefits. I'm splitting the baby here, but here's an interesting take. It best benefits the SEC to do the top 12. We know that. However,
like a BCS formula type of thing?
Yes, exactly. However, for individual SEC teams, it best benefits to do the other way, because if you're Tennessee, for instance, and you get into the playoff, say you're the 3rd team, you're getting in either way, top 5, 7, or just top 12. If it's top 12, you'll get in, but a 9-3 Florida might get in. Would you rather a 9-3 Florida get in, or a 11-1 conference champ Utah State get in? You'd rather the 11-1 conference champ Utah State get in. That makes your path a little bit easier to the national championship.
Yeah, I would prefer. I mean, wouldn't you? As opposed to the conference champion getting in, wouldn't that make for better games if a 9-3 SEC team gets in over, let's say, a 10-2 conference champion from, let's say, the Mountain West becomes a Power 5 conference, which it could. I would rather see the 3rd best team in the SEC, or maybe even the 4th best team in the SEC in some years, than a very good team in the Mountain West.
I would, but if I'm a fan of that SEC team, I'd rather play the Mountain West team in the playoff than the SEC, the other SEC team. And so that's where this goes. So it depends. would you rather have more opportunities to reach the playoff or have a slightly easier road once you get in the playoff? That's the question for the SEC.
And I'm going to split the baby too a little bit because I like the SEC championship game, and I don't want it to turn into the NCAA basketball tournament, which is really all that college basketball has going for it, right? Or I'm sorry, the SEC basketball tournament. I don't want it to be just completely meaningless. I want the SEC championship game to mean something. So I get that side of the argument. LSU, for instance, had they won an SEC championship, not made a 12-team playoff, it would have looked a little bit bizarre last year. And I know they would have been in the hunt nevertheless. But yeah, I'm splitting a little bit. And I know that I'm, supposed to take one side and do the hot take stuff. But I would like to see a conference champion get in. I just want to be real particular about who the conferences are. Obviously, the Pac-12's out of the discussion. Does that bring the Mountain West in? Or eventually we're going to say an automatic berth for Conference USA? I mean, that's what I'm afraid will happen at some point. They're going to start to pull others in for conference champions to be automatic berths. So if I had to pick, if you're asking Dave Hooker to pick today, I would say that I want a formula that picks out the top 12. But I hope that doesn't mean the SEC championship game becomes the SEC basketball tournament.
The only thing...
By the way, Travis, splitting the baby, do you want to explain that phrase? I think I heard it just a couple weeks ago, started using it.
It's a biblical story. There were two women who both fought over the parental rights of a baby, and King Solomon, to test who was the real mother, said, cut the baby in half and we'll see.
So then nobody wins anything.
Well, no, he said, cut the baby in half and that's the compromise. You guys each get half the baby. Well, one woman's like, yeah, I'll do it. And then the other woman is like, well, no, just you can have the baby. I just don't want my baby dead. And King Solomon's like, well, that's obviously the mother because she didn't want her baby dead. Now, who the heck wanted the baby cut in half? Like that's the hilarity of that story. Like, did somebody...
So it basically is saying for our context that we're a little bit split on the argument. So, yes. Caleb, are you split? You said you're a little split on the argument. Would you rather... Go ahead.
For the integrity of the playoff, I think that at the top 12 makes the most sense. It's silly to do this automatic bid thing anymore. But I do think you're going to have issues where, Kirby Smart brought this up. What if two SEC teams are 12 and if you just do a top 12, what if two SEC teams are 12-0 playing for the SEC title? If you're both 12-0, you're probably going to be in the top 4 of the college football playoff, meaning you're going to get a first round bye. Why would either team even try? Why would you risk injury at that point? And so I think that there's kind of an issue here with, I'm warning you guys. I am telling you, Dave, I know you're debating me on this. You are devaluing everything we hold dear about college football with this 12-team playoff the way it's going, because the SEC championship is getting rendered borderline irrelevant. Top 2 matchups in the regular season don't matter anymore because both teams are going to the playoff. So who cares? And now with the top 12, they both might get first round byes even. So I'm just warning you guys, this is not... It's borderline the college basketball regular season at this point.
What if you lose could you put a slight phrase in there that if you lose your conference championship game, you can't be in the college football playoff?
You mean in the first round? You mean in the first round bye thing?
No, let's just say if you lose your conference championship game, you cannot be in the college football playoff.
So you're telling me...
No, let me throw this at you. Seriously. If Georgia had lost last year to LSU in the SEC championship game, they could not be in the college football playoff. What about that caveat? We've never flipped it.
But then, so you're saying Tennessee could go then, which they would have last year? And so Georgia would be punished for actually having gone to play for the SEC title? You do that, Dave, no one's going to try to play for the SEC title. They're going to try to back out of having to play that game.
Yeah, maybe I should think on that a little longer.
Like, all right, I'm going to tell you guys, if you want the 12-team playoff and you want to make it work, it's not working in this scenario. The way it's going, it's not going to work. You should have 8 16-team conferences. That's your all of college football. 8 16-team conferences. The top 4 conference champs get first-round byes. The next 4 get home playoff games. And then you get 4 wild cards. Then every regular season game matters. But the way you're going, a 20-team Big Ten, a 16-team SEC that will eventually be a 20-team SEC, I'm sorry, guys. This is college football has sacrificed 3 months for 1 month. That's what they've done. And that's just a fact. They have sacrificed 3 months of entertainment for 1 extra month of entertainment.
Yeah, but it's pretty high drama. And I'd have to be a TV exec to tell you if the numbers are good enough in order to do that. But the other thing, at some point, you're going to be butting up against coverage of the NFL. And as popular as college football is, and as much as we love it, the NFL usually wins in that regard. I think you would agree with that.
Also, SEC championship game, conference champions are silly now. Because when there's a 20-team conference and you play 9 teams in that conference, there is no way with any shred of integrity you can declare a real conference champion without factoring in schedule strength or something like that.
Now, I agree with all of that. So let's turn our attention to Missouri, which I don't often like to do because I think you know how I feel about Missouri. The fact that they were even invited into the conference is just goofy to me, and still is in my craw, so to speak, as they like to say. But Missouri holds a watch party to celebrate a commitment. First of all, tell me about the commitment. It is William Nwaneri, which Tennessee was in on as well. And Caleb, how big of a commitment is this for Missouri? It's pretty significant for them.
Yeah, this is a very good pickup for them. I mean, he's a fringe 4 or 5-star guy, and I can't take that away. And so this is a good pickup. Missouri has a pretty solid track record of linemen. That's one of their strengths. I mean, dating back to the Sheldon Richardsons, Michael Sams, those guys. So they've produced NFL linemen in the draft for a long time. So if you're an edge rusher, which when William Nwaneri would be, Missouri's not a bad place to go. That was the Gary Pinkel era, so you debate that versus the Eli Drinkwitz era. But look, I'm not taking anything away. This is a good pickup for them. This is a very good pickup.
For them,
it would have been a good pickup for Tennessee.
Yeah, it would have been it's an incredible pickup for them. It's a monumental pickup for them. I don't know why the guy's going there other than maybe they got together a bag of NIL cash and they threw it all at one player, which probably is the case. I have no idea where he went. And
I mean, he is from Missouri. You know, some guys like to stay home.
Yeah, but he's on my watch to be in the transfer portal in 2025. But so let's get to the clip, because the clip is pretty interesting. I think you'll enjoy it. Be sure and hit that like and subscribe button. Turn your notifications on because we got a lot going on. John Adams on Tuesday, Jimmy Himes on Wednesday, Josh Ward on Thursday, Fred White on Friday, and also the Celebrate 98 series is really kicking into gear. Excited about that. So let's go to this clip. This is the watch party that Missouri held for Williams Nwaneri. Let's get excited, everybody.
Guys, this is just so inspiring.
So fired up. We're not on the YouTube video for our audio listeners. They're so excited. They're all gathered in a room and they're just so happy, as if they're acting surprised too. I don't think that you're gathering everyone together unless you know 100%, right? I mean, you're
not doing that for. This is one of the most pathetic things I think I've ever seen a coach do for a gimmick. And this surpasses the Butch Jones trash can. Remember that one, Dave?
Oh, yeah. It might surpass the Butch Jones berating recruiting reporters behind the scenes to get an extra star as well. I would say that it might even do that. You know what they should do is they should have a watch party when William Winery goes to the bank and his check actually clears. That's what
that's what Florida has to do.
Yeah, I mean, Florida's like, yeah, let's all go down to the community bank and we'll discuss. All right, so let's get to 4 downs. That has to do with Missouri and basically just making fun of them. So if you're a Missouri fan, you might not like, but just don't have your feelings hurt because you know it's true.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. He's my realtor. He should be yours. Best prices and service in East Tennessee and the Knoxville area. That's Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Visit him and know that you will have a guy that's got your best interest in mind. And I've been burned by a realtor, but not Andy, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. So, Coop, get us started. I know you don't usually say first down and the like, but I thought it was funny to have you do so. 4 downs brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
Coop here. First down.
All right. Would you host a watch party? And I want to get your thoughts on the message board as well for a 5-star. If you knew you could get him, whatever school you're behind, whether it's Tennessee, we got a lot of South Carolina people, a lot of LSU people, starting to have a lot of Alabama people based off analytics. Would you host a watch party if it meant that you would get a 5-star prospect? If you don't get him. So there's no in between, no more splitting the argument. Would you host a watch party for a 5-star?
And that's the only way I could get the 5-star?
That's the only way you can get him. He's like, I have to have a watch party. I don't even care about NIL, but I want a watch party with all your current players.
Yes. I'm not going to lie. Yes. Particularly if you're Missouri and you need 5 stars because you're so limited on what you can recruit. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to say no because I think that guys would start to ask for that. And I think you could deflect it, I should say. And I'm not Tom Brady, but you could deflect it into, well, you got to be careful with that. Let's do something different, blah, blah, blah. We've got our social media team. So I would not, even if he said, well, I'm not coming. I'm like, okay, I can't do that. But I wonder, would you do that for Nico? Caleb said yes, and I think the message board is going to agree with you. I might be in the minority here.
Okay, but you talk about the arrogance of recruits. I don't know if you remember this. Tobias Harris committed to Tennessee in basketball because he wanted to go to a place that hadn't accomplished much before, and he wanted to be the most accomplished winner at Tennessee. Now he only stayed for 1 year, and they got bounced out in the first round of the NCAA tournament. But that was one of the reasons he picked Tennessee.
Well, good job continuing Tennessee's tradition of not accomplishing much in March in college basketball. I mean, is that a basketball maxim? He shall not do well in March because that's kind of been Tennessee.
Or just once there's a tournament. The minute there's a tournament, the minute it's a win or go home situation, whether it be the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament or one of those preseason tournaments that you do in the preseason NIT or whatever.
Okay, this kind of ties into what I was talking about. Second down, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Does this overall hurt or help Missouri? They get a 5-star guy, but they're made fun of on a national scale. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I think it hurts more in recruiting. I think that other coaches will say, we don't have to, we don't have to throw parties for 5 stars because we're blank. I think it hurts big picture as opposed to getting a fantastic prospect.
I think actually, if you believe in Eli Drinkwitz as an offensive mind, I know you don't, but I'm saying, say you do. I'm
okay. I'm actually okay with him as an offensive mind, not to interrupt. If he were an OC, I would be okay with him. I just don't think he's a head coach.
Okay, well then I'd say it helps because here's what I'd say. Yeah, Missouri's never going to compete with the schools that say we don't have to do this for 5 stars. They compete with schools that can't say that in recruiting. So Missouri could be a little bit of an Oklahoma State. I'm going to say this. I don't like him. I thought what he did was despicable. I've never defended it. But the Mike Gundy rant in 2007 did help him get a certain type of athlete going forward. And it was a total gimmick. It was a total charade what he put on when he did that. But it was specifically so certain athletes will commit to him to saying, oh, this head coach is gonna back me no matter what. even though it was all
That
fake.
voice. Well, and Doug Dickey did the same thing with Jerry Green. You remember that, right? So Tony Harris was called a punk in a column by the late Gary Lundy, and they held a press conference basically to rally behind Jerry Green and to say that terminology is not okay, which Tony Harris tried to spin that into that's a homosexual reference at the time, which I'd never heard punk being a homosexual reference. And I think that Tennessee overreacted and kind of made Jerry Green look a little bit stupid and made Tony Harris look a little bit stupid as well. But that was Tennessee's decision. Third down, Coop.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Is Missouri the lamest? The lamest SEC program. Period. End of discussion or question mark. Is it? Question mark. Yes, it is, says Dave. No question about it. It is the lamest athletic department in the SEC.
Yes, but yes, it is. Unless Georgia Tech rejoins, because Georgia Tech is the lamest athletic program in the country. But for right now, it's
shot at the
Missouri.
Yellow Jackets. But here's some people would say Vanderbilt, but at least Vanderbilt has strong academic integrity and is in a state that keeps the SEC, or is in a city that keeps the SEC relevant and one of the biggest growing markets in the entire nation. Missouri was what's supposed to bring in St. Louis. Is anybody?
Nobody in St. Louis cares about Missouri.
Yeah, is anybody running to the television saying, forget the NFL, forget other things that are going on. I got to see my Tigers play. Maybe 24.
Vanderbilt also has the chant, "That's all right, that's okay, you're going to work for us someday." I don't think Missouri fans can have that chant.
Yeah, they say, actually, that's all right, that's okay. You can be a photog one day, because they do have a good journalism school.
They have an amazing. That's their problem, though. I've actually said this about Missouri. Their journalism school is so good. Dave, we talked about this. Deep South schools, Alabama, Louisiana, some of the most homer media you'll ever find. LSU and Alabama. I mean, literally, it's like, "Hey, coach, what do you want me to say about you that's good today?" "Okay, yes, sir. I'll write that. That's Alabama and LSU media. I'm sorry. I'm going at them. Missouri, though,
I would say Tennessee and Georgia and Florida on the flip side are above average journalism.
They are very good. They're very fair. I agree.
Okay.
Missouri is the reverse. Because they're such a good journalism school, they think, well, we're the best journalism school in the country, yes. And so we have to be hard on the coaches and the football players, and everything we write is going to be against them. That's Missouri.
On the message board, somebody said, referenced it's ugly on paying to stay home. Yeah, it is. But as a man that's about to send his son off about 500 miles to college, I would probably pay if there was a way that they could move the University of Massachusetts to East Tennessee. All right, fourth down, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
You are the commissioner, Caleb Calhoun. One, because you know where I'm going to land on this. But what program would you boot out of the SEC if you were given that power?
I'd still boot Vanderbilt. I would still boot Vanderbilt out. I'm sorry, because I don't care about academics. This is a sports conference. Can we stop pretending academics means anything? Like my guy 3-year letterman on Twitter says, an hour in the weight room matters more than 10 in the classroom. Okay, so I'm kicking Vanderbilt out. Missouri still brings some value in football. And it's not like Tennessee has to. It's not like the SEC needs Vanderbilt to be in the Nashville market. They don't. There's Tennessee, there's Kentucky, there's Alabama that are all right around Nashville. So I'm kicking out Vanderbilt.
It's Missouri for Dave, and you knew that it would be. I can't stand that program. It's funny how every summer Missouri manages, and Eli Drinkwitz manages to make a fool out of himself. Last year, it was taking shots at Tennessee, and I don't care if you take shots at anybody. As a matter of fact, I like it, but it was just so forced in that Jim Rome interview. And now we're in another summer, and Eli Drinkwitz is holding a watch party. How far down does it go? If they get a middle-of-the-road 3-star, maybe you throw a watch party for them. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, Butch Jones is all but about to be the head of PR for that program. because this is, I mean,
why you very well should be concerned about gambling, no matter what SEC team you root for, but Tennessee as well. Back in about 90 seconds with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook.
Candace, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Candace has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
He does. And I need Caleb Calhoun who stepped away from the camera. Here we go.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Caleb, did you have to step away?
Yes.
I'm assuming that was a restroom break. I still remember a nationally syndicated show. I can't remember the guy's name, but he did middays. I think it was One-on-One Sports. And I don't remember if they're even still in business. But I remember he got locked. Somehow the lock messed up in the restroom, and he got locked in the restroom. So he was just gone for like a good 8 minutes, and they didn't know what to do. And it was bizarre. It was pretty bizarre. I was glad I listened to that. We can never retrieve that. And nowadays we're spoiled. We can retrieve anything on the World Wide Web, but I would give anything to have that 8 minutes of a producer explain why the host is locked into the restroom.
Well, at least you didn't see me pull a Paul Pierce and get carted off in a wheelchair. And
that's true. Or get really stoned with strippers.
Wait, what? Oh, Paul Pierce does get stoned with strippers. That's true. Are we sure he was stoned?
I mean, I would guess if you're in that environment, I would think. Vols Time says remove Vanderbilt and Mizzou and add Notre Dame and Clemson. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Don't add Notre Dame. Notre Dame is getting more and more irrelevant as a program by the year. In 30 years, nobody's going to care about Notre Dame because once millennials and Gen Z are
30 years, good Lord, Caleb.
Once millennials and Gen Z are the majority of college football, nobody's going to remember Notre Dame ever mattering.
Yeah.
They're the future Vanderbilt. They're the future Vanderbilt.
Well, I think that too, but 30 years, that's a long time. I mean, they still have an awful lot of pull. Lou Holtz left that program because he couldn't get Randy Moss in school, among other players. So I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know if I'm going to be around in 30 years. I kind of hope not. Rocky Top Tom says, really stoned strippers sound like an awesome time. I guess you have to pay extra. You have to pay them extra to be really stoned.
I mean, I don't know. We should ask the hooker here on what you have to do.
There you go. There you go. Does that make you the John? Here we go.
My first name is John.
Is it really?
Yes. I am John C. Calhoun, who is not the greatest figure in American history. I'm just going to say that. Just kind of not a good dude.
Oh, man. Travis says when Gen Z is in control, their defense, there won't be football. They're likely that may be the case.
Gen Z still loves football. People say that Gen Zers love football.
Yes. Travis and Rocky Top Tom also pointed out that strippers usually come stoned. I guess so. It's been a while, but maybe.
Oh, it has, Dave.
Yes, it's been a long time. But I could tell you an interesting group the last time that I went to such an establishment. Chris Sims walked out of said establishment.
Really?
Yes.
Actually, okay.
And basically every reporter that covers Tennessee, and I'll just leave it at that.
Sidebar for that. Now that you say that, I got a question because we all like Casey Clausen, but I just listened to a podcast the other day that some people think Tennessee's downfall started by not getting Chris Sims, and they think the early 2000s would have been better with him over Casey. Do you think? I don't think that's true. I think Casey was better than Chris Sims would have been at Tennessee.
No, but he committed to Tennessee and then pulled it. So I think that hurt. I think that hurt Tennessee's class. And then, like after being at Texas a year, he accused Tennessee of being segregated in their locker room based off race. And
did that impact recruiting?
Yeah, I think it did. It was very public at the time. He said when he visited Tennessee that it was like the white people sat together and the black people sat together, which was, I had no evidence of that, and it seemed like just a random shot to throw out. But yeah, I think Chris Sims was a huge hit not coming to Tennessee in the way it played out. What the age?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Gambling's a thing, guys, and I'm one for the less regulation, the better. I got no problem with it. We all have our vices. That doesn't happen to be mine. I know Caleb likes to gamble, and we certainly appreciate our relationship with Zen Sports. And I think at the end of the day, that deregulation of gambling will lead to less wrongdoings, because I think when you regulate it and you have things out there, that eventually it gets better. And I think we've seen that with marijuana. I think we've seen that, if you want to go back to the 1920s, with alcohol. I think we saw it there. So amidst Iowa's gambling scandal, their coach, Kirk Ferentz, says that Iowa is the only state with a criminal investigation into its athletes. That is the exact wrong stance to take, number one, Caleb. You don't want to say, woe is me, when you could be in the middle of something very, very, very serious. I don't believe Josh Heupel or Shane Beamer or Nick Saban or anybody that I can think of other than maybe Eli Drinkwitz would handle it this way, because what you need to say is this is very serious and we're going to take care of it yesterday. That's what Alabama baseball did. They fired a guy within 48 hours of news coming out. This is just a really poor response by Iowa. And I would hope that any SEC team, especially with pressure from the conference, would handle it much, much better than the way Ferentz is handling it. You don't say, oh, it's just we're getting investigated. It must be happening elsewhere. No, that's not the right take.
I'm going to ask you, though, do you think he's right? Whether or not it's the right or wrong take, do you think that maybe other states like a Tennessee would be, shall we say, covering for athletes if they're doing this?
No, because I think that, I watched this, the recent show. I binge watched it, watched the whole thing. Painkiller or Painkillers with Matthew Broderick, and it's about the Oxycontin epidemic. And there was basically one person that worked at a DA's office that was uber motivated by, in this case, crack cocaine in her past. And she didn't want to see that happen again with our society. So whether you're motivated by that or making your career, I think if somebody the right person came across gambling was an issue with an SEC football team, I think they would absolutely jump all over it and dog it until they found something. So no, I don't think that Iowa is being unfairly persecuted, if that was your question.
Oh, I don't think they're being unfairly persecuted either. I was just curious as why, if it's happening at Iowa, my guess, because it happened at Iowa and Iowa State. So
Right.
both schools got caught with this. So it wasn't a program problem. It was clearly statewide. So if it's happening at both schools, I get the hunch that it's happening elsewhere. And
No. I think it is happening elsewhere. As a matter of fact, I would go ahead and go out on a limb and say there is an athlete in all 50 states that in some fashion is gambling in ways that he shouldn't be and is at a college institution. Maybe a little bitty. It may still be that I'm betting $100 on a game with a buddy. But yes, I think it's probably happening in all 50 states. And the bottom line is, if you want to do it, you better be smart about it.
yes, and I think it's more likely to happen at programs that don't matter as much. So if you're Tennessee, within a year, you hope that you're going to have a team, your whole team's going to be made up of players that's thinking about the NFL. So they're not going to throw anything. You don't think Vanderbilt might have a few players that know they're not going anywhere, that are like, hey, who cares? Why not just bet against my team to cover today?
Yeah. Or Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri might be betting against his own team because he knows he's going to lose. I can't stop throwing in Missouri shots. No, you bring up a good point. And again, with NIL, even small NIL deals, these players have money in their pocket. So, Caleb, again, I know you gamble. I don't, and it's not anything against it. It's not any moral thing. I just haven't had that vice. But I think there's a very slippery slope in that you could see a player gamble and with a bookie and get forced into stuff. However, with the regulation of it, you're going to be able to track that guy fairly quickly. And we've seen that with some other athletes. Was it Calvin Ridley, I believe? We've seen that with other players where they show up on some of these searches pretty easily, and you can figure out it's them because of credit card numbers and everything's trackable. So I just think it's a matter of time till some of these district attorney offices decide they want to dive into this. And if they wanted to in almost any state, especially a sports crazed state, I bet they could find somebody doing it in almost any one.
So this is where I am with it. It's funny because everybody's debated what role Congress should play in NIL. And I've been one, Congress stay out of NIL. Let the players make any money they want. Congress, NCAA, leave them alone. I think gambling is a totally different story. And I think this is where actually there should be federal laws. There needs to be federal laws where you are not, Dave, you're an investor. If you get caught insider trading, you go to prison. Period. End of story. If you are betting in the stock market on a company that you run, if we go publicly traded and you start betting on, although that's not going to happen anytime soon, but I mean, if we were to be LLC and you started betting on us in the stock market, you and I would go to prison for that because that's insider trading and illegal. Well, betting on the sports you play is a form of insider trading. And I think that there should be federal laws against that, for or against. I mean, I thought Pete Rose should have done time in federal prison for betting on baseball. I do. And I don't care that he bet on his team to win every time because, as you know, in baseball, if you're a manager, you might bring in a relief pitcher that you wouldn't bring in that day because you bet a lot of money to win that game. And
in July instead of having him fresh for September.
Exactly. So I am huge on, I'm for a federal law. You can't bet on a sport you play. And if you do, you are, and I think sports should have a law where if you bet on the sports you play, I think they should do it with the baseball thing. You're permanently barred from ever playing this sport again. You can't collect a check. I don't even think Pete Rose should be allowed to collect a pension from Major League Baseball. I mean, that is the one, to me, that is the worst crime you can commit in the sport you play. I think Calvin Ridley should be banned from the NFL. I don't think he should ever be allowed to set foot on a football field again, honestly. And I know that's harsh, but that's where I land.
No, I totally agree with that stance because it's the difference between what we watch as sports and reality television, which is the most unreal television that is on television. Those reality shows are all set up. So if you were to somehow adjust sports and manipulate the outcome of those, that to me would be a major problem on your team or not. So Yeah, I completely agree with you. I will say this with the NFL. I think if it was a serious gambling problem in college, the way they would handle it, which I don't really like, but I think the way they would handle it is you would basically just be blackballed. And I don't know that there would be a formal announcement, but you just wouldn't get drafted. Now, what if you're an elite player? Then somebody's going to want to take you. So you do need to have those laws in place. And I'm with you. I got no problem with that. I think that's refreshing that you said that, because I know a lot of people want to back Pete Rose because he was a good old guy and stuff. He wasn't. He was a gangster in a baseball uniform.
Yes. And I'm okay with letting PED players back on the field. I get PEDs, you're cheating, you're trying to gain an edge. It's an unfair edge. You're compromising the game a little bit. You suspend them, you bring them back if they do it one time. I'm fine with that. Gambling, PEDs don't threaten the very credibility of the league the way gambling does. It just doesn't. And people who try to say that what McGuire or Bonds did is worse than what Pete Rose did, no, it's not. And I'm not saying McGuire or Bonds deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think they do either. But I'm saying Pete Rose crossed a line that you shouldn't cross. And if college football and NFL doesn't get this under control, and I say this as somebody who thinks sports should embrace gambling to a certain degree. I think if you're one of the smaller sports and you're trying to get big, if you're the WNBA, you should go all in on sports gambling. You should embrace and advertise it and try to make it. That'll make your league cool. But you can't let your players or your coaches or your administrators bet. That's my one rule. If you are affiliated with the league, you can't bet on the league. And there should be federal laws on that.
Yep. And it would be bad for some programs in the short term, but it would be better I believe, for our society and gambling in the long term. Again, I'm anti-regulation in general. I'm not saying that heroin should be legal or anything like that, but I'm anti-regulation for the most part. And I think that the vast majority of people that smoke marijuana or gamble, that they do it as entertainment. And I don't think you see some of the extreme cases of abuse that you do with some other vices. But so based on that, I have no problem. Again, I don't want heroin available at the local convenience store. 7-Eleven special of the day. How about some smack? But
I watched a whole Chris Rock stand-up recently, and he's like, just legalize crack, just so my friends' parents can have something to brag about. And so, he's like, my son's got his own crack house down the road, and he's doing it big. But to be fair, I mean, look, you just talked about the Painkillers documentary you watch. I mean, how many people, how many pharmacists have, bragged, I'm a very successful pharmacist. And that really means that you were selling legal drugs that were as bad as heroin.
No, and by the way, you need to watch that show. It's phenomenal. For Caleb Calhoun, Matthew Broderick puts the whipped cream and the cherry on top of his career in Painkillers, just randomly suggesting that and endorsing it, because I stayed up till 4 a.m. working on something and it was on in the background. So there you go. And Vols Time said, what would keep the player getting a family member to place a bet for them? Well, that very well could happen.
But that can happen like with insider trading too. That's just that you're not going to fully prevent it.
Yeah, exactly. We're not saying you're going to eradicate it, but you can at least scare a lot of people away from doing it, and you can put those that are abusing it in prison. So I'm called a libertarian. I don't even know what that means. I've always
libertarian is the.
I know what it means. I just always have said I wouldn't share my politics with people. That's just what I think in general. I've never in 25 years shared my politics with people. I'm not going to do that because I know you want to hear about sports. So maybe I went a little bit too far. But he says it's cool. Robert says it's cool. So I guess being a libertarian, if that's what I am, is cool, I guess. All right. Have a fantastic day, evening, night, morning, whenever you're listening. Remind you to click the like button, subscribe, and turn those notifications on. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a